Recording is on.
Okay, so let's start with today's interaction. So every time I had been looking into the various applications with peer-to-peer. So we had done already search engine last time, how that will be done. So the network topology is being maintained with logarithmic partitioning using same node ID concept as done for structured thing. Only the key value pairs are not being stored at all the nodes. So every node will have its own documents which it wants to publish. It will just maintain an inverted index for that, for all keywords. And based on the request which is coming or the query which is coming, it will be responding by searching into the index. The document itself will be transferred to the user, and it will also be cached at the node from which the previous node from which the query actually arrived at the node. So this becomes kind of a caching mechanism. So there are too many people trying to access a document, this will essentially get spread across the network and people will be able to easily get it. The more a document is in demand, the more it will be available at a lot of places. So next application which I thought I can talk about is live streaming system. So we have already been using this web conferencing system, Google Meet or Jitsi Meet. But these actually requires that each one of us who are running a client, both of them are running in Java browser, in a Chrome browser or a Firefox which has JavaScript capability. So it's basically JavaScript code, and they are all communicating back to a media bridge, or we call it a video bridge. And from there, I think appropriate layers, video, audio are being distributed to everybody. So you are getting feed from everybody, and then you are playing it at your own end. Okay, and there is also a signaling which is available, which is going through another signaling server, which is maintained on the server side. But the course is about peer-to-peer system, so we have to figure out how this will be done on peer-to-peer system. Okay, now even in normal internet, this video conferencing or web conferencing can be done over multicast. Unfortunately, it is not done because not all routers are multicast enabled. Okay, of course, it's very efficient technique, so I will be also talking about that. And maybe taking cues from that, we can look into the design which we are now trying to do as a part of Brihaspati 4. So this essentially give insight into the people who are also involved in the development or who will be doing their master's thesis. Okay. So the idea in the live streaming is, and I'm talking about streaming as well as web conferencing both. This can be converted to for both thing, but currently it's only talking about streaming. So one guy transmits, everybody else simply receives, the way it is happening now. But we can also interact. Okay. So the single source will be transmitting, and this will be received by everybody. I call it a media stream. So this consists of audio, video. Maybe video may have multiple layers depending on if you are actually having lower bandwidth or higher bandwidth. You can subscribe to the quality. So you can leave the group or join the group if it's across that. So you can actually take care of the congestion by the receiver actions. So it's a receiver which has to figure out whether he's not getting what it's supposed to get. So he can assume there is a net congestion upstream, and he can actually reduce the congestion by removing some of the layers from whatever it is getting. Okay, so everybody who gets it will be playing it back. So this is a very commonly used architecture, as I was mentioning. So for example, there is a source which is transmitting, in this case me, which is transmitting. It goes to all the way to a server, and users will be now getting the feed from servers. Now fundamentally the problem here is that the source need to actually have large bandwidth, because there will be so many communications. So every packet is being duplicated. If a copy has to be made, if there are 4 guys getting it, the 4 copies are made by source, server, and transmitted in the network. But mostly server will be connecting to the network through a bandwidth pipe. So this bandwidth pipe has to be huge for if you want to cater to large number. Now we are now looking for a system which does not cater to 4, 5, 10, 12 or 35, but say millions or trillions of people. Of course, trillions we don't have. We have only 8 billion people on the earth. So about 8 billion connections we should be able to sustain. Okay, that should be the capability of the system. So one of the ways, the way the Google, for example, manages YouTube. So each one of us actually can get a YouTube feed whenever a match is happening or something, but each one of us do connect to a server. Okay, but how they actually, it comes almost seamlessly. It's actually coming, but it's coming with a delay. So normally company will set up multiple servers. So in this case, I have shown an example. So S1, S2, S3, S4 will be the servers, and the users will get connected to it, to different servers. So whoever is giving the feed will send a copy to other servers. So they kind of form a multicast tree. So this is multicast not at IP layer, but at application layer. Okay, I call it overlaid multicast because being overlaid on top of the existing IP network. And once all servers get a feed, so they can distribute to any number of people. That's how Google actually scales it up. So this multicast network of servers is what we call content distribution network, CDN. Okay, so Akamai actually does this business. So you have to just get in touch with Akamai and have your servers attached to them. It's Akamai's job that a feed at one node will automatically reach to every other server, and it will be doing it efficiently. So it provides that service actually. The Google probably works on that. So the idea is that when you want a feed, you should always go to the least loaded server to get the best performance. And as more and more number of users are going to there, more and more servers need to be deployed. So this has to be taken care of dynamically by the algorithms. Okay, all servers is not serving everything. So for example, a relay of a football match will be only done by few servers. Maybe some other popular event, there will be more servers which will be there. And you tend to use those servers which are in vicinity to the community which is trying to get the feed. So you have to essentially optimize the cost for yourself. The bad part is servers require normally very high bandwidths to cater to the users, and they need to have extremely high reliability. So that's how it is maintained. That's why they need to maintain data center 24/7 supply, power supply, air conditioning, and there has to be backups. So which again is done kind of using a peer-to-peer system and maintaining backups and monitoring. Whatever we have been doing with user clients now is actually done in the server side. They form their own peer-to-peer network with resilience. Now, one of the alternatives which had been thought for a very long time is multicasting. So in multicasting, a packet is sent to a group of users, and how do you identify that group actually? So that group is identified by a group address. So IPv4 version 4 and IPv6 both actually have provisions for multicast addresses. IPv4 does not make it mandatory to have multicast capability, but IPv6 does actually. So quality of service support, we call it DiffServ, differentiated service. There are multiple class of service, and the packets are being given priority of one class compared to another class. So there are multiple priorities. So highest priority class always gets a precedence whenever the packets are routed in the buffer, or when packets have to be dropped, lower priority packets are dropped first. Okay. So IPv4 again, QoS is not mandatory, but V6 it is actually. And you can set up the IPv, this quality of service field in your IP packets which you are sending out. But in that case, telecom operator, if you are not paying the fee, may actually change your quality of service bits and recompute the IP header and then pushing the packet further. So that policing probably it can do. But if you are paying, it can actually give you, allow you to use any kind of QoS thing. So you can send a high QoS packet and low QoS packet. So that additional infrastructure has to be built by telecom operator. So now this is typically done in, for example, BSNL does provide IPTV service, BSNL, Airtel, Reliance, everybody, and they use IP multicast. So multicast means the packet goes to a router. Router knows it has to go to two different routers. It creates two copies of that on the fly in the router itself, not at application layer. It's done at IP layer itself. Further they go, so the copies gets made as the packets are being routed through the network, and everybody gets a copy of the packet. Okay. So this actually is done in IPTV thing for efficiency sake. They also maintain quality of service support. So the IPTV packets are being given higher priority, and each TV channel has a different group address. So want to change the TV channel, you just change you leave one particular group and join another group, and you start getting second feed. other TV feed. Normally what happens is if you are going through multiple channels, the device, even before you switch on and the next channel, it actually automatically would have sent us join for the next few channels, so that when you are actually browsing through channels, you won't get that lag. Okay. In a TV broadcast coming through satellite, this situation is not there. You are getting all the feeds. You have to just switch off from your box itself. So it's kind of switching action from many to one. But in this case, there is subscription which has to go all the way so that you start getting the feed of the new channel from the network. Okay. Honestly, the feed should not be transported over a link if it is not in use. So why to waste the bandwidth? So normally this is done under the name of triple play. So they send voice, normal voice over IP telephony. They send multicasts or IPTV, and they give the internet connection, all three in one go. Okay. And this is how probably it actually works, the multicasting. So for example, this source is there as, and there are these green colors are the users. Two of them are connected to a LAN. So when the feed has to be sent, source will send one packet. A will now create 3 copies. They will send it to more routers. On the way from G, for example, here the packet will be broadcasted in the LAN. But both of these will pick up because they have subscribed to the group address. So there is something called IGMP, which is being implemented in mostly the LANs for this particular purpose, Internet Group Messaging Protocol. And this is done through PIM. I will explain what the PIM is. So C is now sending it, D will again forget 2. So everybody gets one copy of packet. Very efficient tree-based distribution of the packet to multiple of them. Okay. So that's what the multicasting is. So normally the way it happens is that router A will generate 3 copies and forwards to 3 different next hops. This is what is happening if you see here. Okay. And if you go back, router D will generate 2 copies. You can see here the router D is generating 2 copies here going to these 2 green nodes. And in LAN, the link layer multicast is used to send the 2 nodes. If the link layer does not having multicast, of course, then you have to send 2 different link layer packets to each of the users. And there are protocols which are available to support this multicast. These are defined in RFC. One important thing, TCP, which is connection oriented, cannot be used here. Connection can only be set up between 1 to 1, not 1 to many. Okay, they are designed for point-to-point reliable byte pipe implementation. So they have window flow control. They have their own congestion control algorithm, which is we call TCP Reno, which is used. And if there is a losses, they do retransmissions. But in real-time traffic, retransmissions does not make sense. Okay. Now these TCP frames, every byte which is sent in the pipe is having a sequence number, byte sequence number. Okay. So as you keep on sending, and so there is a round robin thing. So once all the bytes have been sent, count is again go back to 0. So this is an ongoing process. This happens cyclically. This ensures that all bytes are delivered in sequence. And there is a window control. Normally, if the packet losses, the retransmission requests are coming in, you assume there is a congestion, you will start reducing your congestion window. You transmit less before you get the acknowledgement. So without waiting acknowledgement, how many packets you can transmit, that's a transmit window. And transmit window will be minimum of congestion window or the receive window. If receiver does not have a space to store, it will tell, okay, I only need this much. So if it is less than the transmit window for congestion reasons, then this receive window will be used. But receiver has a lot of space to accept the data packets, but the transmitter figures out there is a congestion, so it will use a lower congestion window. So congestion window is lower, so that will become your transmit window now. Okay. Now for coming to real-time traffic delivery, the timing of delivery of packets is extremely important. If your audio packet in between gets delayed by 5 minutes, it does not make sense. So next audio packet you have already played back. So there is no use of retransmissions. Okay, so loss of audio, some noise in the video, people won't even be able to perceive it actually. So in that case, it's not a good idea to use TCP because retransmissions will cause delay and delayed packets are useless. So you normally go for UDP. So all multicasting applications or real-time media transports are UDP where error or noise is tolerable. You don't need zero tolerance. File transfer, you can't tolerate even a single bit of error. everything has to be correct document. But voice transmission, few packets or bytes are lost or corrupted, does not matter. You can still make out what I am speaking. So that's UDP essentially is going to be used. In this case, the protocol which is used, because this is a bearing, we can actually build up a protocol on the similar lines even in overlaid multicasting. I can create an overlaid mesh and then create a tree with this approach. Okay. This is the shortest path tree, but I probably require multiple trees so that a guy can get feed from multiple link and node disjoint paths. So the trick has to be slightly different. It has to be a modified version of PIM. So PIM stands for protocol independent multicast, SM stands for sparse mode, D is for dense mode, and SDM is sparse dense mode. Okay, I will explain the difference between the three. So sparse mode is when not everybody is interested in receiving the feed, so few of them. So by default, all the children are not subscribed to the channel. So if only they send a joint request, I will put it in my table. So whatever is feed I am receiving, I will forward to the guys who have subscribed to it. That's a sparse mode. When everybody wants to receive the feed, so by default, I am going to send it to all my children. So somebody who does not want has to send me a leave message. Okay, so I will just remove that thing from the table, or I will keep him in the table of the guys who are not supposed to be sent the packets. Okay, so that's a dense mode. So dense mode is typically when most of the population wants to get the feed, use dense mode. When very few people wants to get the feed, go for a sparse mode. Now within a network, any node for its own subtree for which it is a root, it can decide whether it has to be sparse mode or dense mode. So when I am doing a football transmission, maybe UP, I won't be going for a sparse mode, but when it goes to Bengal or Kerala, I will be doing a dense mode there. Okay. So this can be done automatically. So this is called sparse dense mode actually. Now PIM typically works in this fashion. You will have a mesh, and we have a normal routing table by which we know that who is the next hop to another node. So I am now giving here something called SG. It's a source IP address, and this is a group IP address. I will tell what's the range for group IP address in one of the slides later. So the group address is represented by G and as a source address. So when somebody wants to receive, for example, R1 wants to get a feed for SG, it will find out who is the next hop router towards source S. It will send a join request there. So one is going to maintain a table, MRIB I call it. Okay, there actually I have seen. So R1 sends a join towards S. Each intermediate node forms a multicast forwarding table. We actually call it multicast routing information base. Okay, so once one actually gets this particular thing in its MRIB, it will say, okay, this particular SG is the group identifier now. The child will be R1. So if I get a feed for this, I have to send a copy to R1. So that's what is going to be kept in the copy here. Okay, now one will send a packet message to 2, join will send it to 2. So 2 will now send it to 3. So node 3, for example, in this case will receive 1, 2, 3. So it will say 3 will keep a record that I have to give it to 2. So you can see there is given to 2. Okay, so next, similarly, node S will be maintaining it has to be given to 3. Node 2 will be saying given to 1. Node 1 will say given to R1. So this whole path, which is being shown by this pink one, is now being represented by the MRIB entries at 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now, similarly, now some R2 wants to initiate. R2 is here. It is being shown by green communication link. So R2 will send a join message, and it will make an entry in source. It will say it has to go to 3 and 5. Okay, because already it was sending a packet to 3. It will now also start sending a packet to 5. So because the same SG, same group. So now the 2 children will be there, which you can actually see. So S will have 2 children, 3 and 5. Okay. And now 5 will have a SG entry that it has to be given to R2. Now the third guy will also come in. R3 will initiate the join. So node S will now make another entry called 4. So 3, 4, 5, the packets have to be sent. Node 4 will make it R3. I got the multicast tree done distributively only by join. Normally, every join request has to be done periodically. MRIB for every entry will have a timer. If the timer expires, you will purge the entry. So somebody is not has sent a refresh, probably the guy is dead. So don't have to send a copy to him. If he's alive, he is interested, he will keep on sending the join periodically. It's a refresh. It's a heartbeat basically. So as I told, in dense mode, the multicast routing table MRIB will now maintain not the list of the children who has to get the packet, but list of the children which has to be excluded from the when the packets are forwarded, the receipt packets are forwarded. And of course, for a sparse dense mode, the subtree of a node, the node who is at the root of the subtree, it will decide whether I have to go for dense or sparse mode. Okay, so every node can decide for its own children this particular thing, and you can actually have a hybrid scenario also. Okay, now the problem with the SG source specific tree is that if there are too many sources, start multicasting. So a routing table will become huge for same group address but multiple sources. So you are, for example, doing a multiplayer video game. Okay, so if there are too many students asking a question, too many videos, for example, here we have 4 or 5 people who may transmit the video at the same time, but if 1,000 people do it, my table size will become complicated. Okay, so not searching a table, then forwarding the packet, there's an overhead in that. So this MRIB size needs to be reduced. So there is a concept called shared multicast tree, which is used. So one of the nodes is among all the multicast enabled routers is being elected as a RP. RP is rendezvous point, and the join will not have, will use a star in place of S, star G. For any group address, join always has to be sent towards the RP, rendezvous point. Okay, so everybody is going to send a join to RP as if REP is going to give it. But the way it is handled is, so here actually I have shown an RP here. So the source you want to transmit. So I will come back to this whole process. But before that, in this group addresses, how they will be assigned. So there is already a standard which says that class B addresses will be used as a multicast group addresses. So this actually goes from 1110, rest everything 0, and 1110 and rest everything 1. This is the range. So this 224.0.0.02, 239.255.255.255. That's the range which is used as a group address. We have to, in our P2P system, have to use a different mechanism. We also need a group identifier in this case if we want a similar structure to be built. Okay, currently we do it in a slightly different fashion, but certainly we can do it in this fashion also. Okay, by creating a join kind of thing, but our trees routing tables are being maintained in a different way. But I think this will be a very efficient way of doing it. So current B4 design, I am still thinking how this will be done. So this is the range 232.0.0.0/8 is IPv4 range. This for IPv6, again it is specified /96 addresses. Okay, and these are basically these two range. Now these two range is more than the range which is being specified here. IPv4 this range is larger. Now this range is for source specific multicast. So whenever I have this particular range and a group address from here, and I get from a certain source a packet, I have a discretion to actually start making a SG join and make a tree rooted at source. Or I may have an option to just still use star G join and start even getting the feed. Okay, so how the packets get forwarded when star G and RP, the rendezvous point tree or shared core tree is being used, or is called CBT also, core based trees. So whenever there is a hybrid thing, so on star G paths, also the SG packets are also sent. But all star G packets are not sent onto SG paths till the packet actually is from the same source. Okay, that's the way actually it goes. So this is the typical scenario by which actually tells how this tree is going to be will be created. So there is a rendezvous point. So source will send a packet towards RP. Okay, and so S wants to transmit to star G. So initially there is no tree. So even if it sends, other guys will not be getting anything from RP actually. So first job is to send your packets to RP somehow, So that if somebody joins this star G group, they should be able to start getting the packets. It may not be coming from your side. So it will encapsulate, it will send all its multicast packets encapsulated in a unicast packet. IP and IP tunneling we call it. And these are dispatched to RP. RP will take, de-encapsulate the multicast packet, and then whoever is a star G subscriber, it will send the packets to those from among the neighbors. And everybody will do the same thing. Okay. Any new node A which wants to receive this particular stream will send a join towards the RP. So next hop towards RP packet. So it will simply add this new guy to the child and will start sending star G packets to him. Okay. Or if it is not subscribed, it will make an entry in the MRIB for star G for this particular child and will send a join further upstream towards RP. So, and when that feed will start coming from that side, you will again start forwarding it to the children. So if nobody else is there, you will end up in reaching to RP at some point of time and start getting feed thereafter. Now, forwarding rule in such a tree is very simple. We can actually use it in our overlaid multicasting system also. There's a lot to learn actually from multicasting scenario. So node can receive star G packet from any multicast neighboring node. That's important. It's not always from the next hop towards RP. No, it can come from some others also because that is feasible. So I will tell you why that is feasible. It's because the source will actually stop at some point of time sending it to that IP and IP tunneling. So whenever a packet is received, it will be forwarded to the all children who are subscribed to star G except the node from which the same packet has been received. And also a copy in this scenario will be sent to the parent node in the RPT. Okay, or the next hop towards rendezvous point. And when a packet from star G is received from the parent or from the next hop towards RP, it will be sent to all the children. So that's the rule which is followed. Okay. So now once IP and IP tunneling packets have been sent from S to the RP and everybody getting feed from RP, so what will happen is this packet source itself also will start getting a feed from the RP. Whatever it is transmitting will start coming back. At that point of time, the moment it starts getting back, it will also send a join actually towards RP. So it will start getting the feed. Once it gets it, it will start simply sending the packets through the multicast tree. Now, because the first rule we say that children who are subscribed to star G will be broadcasted to everybody except from the node from which it is received. In that case, a copy to the parent node will also go. So the packet from S will actually be going from this source to this node. From here, if this guy is subscribed, a copy will go here as well as towards the parent. If these guys are subscribed, a copy will go this side and to a parent. And from there, it will go to all other tree things. So you don't require any more IP and IP tunneling or the initiation phase. So that's the way the PIM protocol, independent multicast protocol, actually operates. So this is already part of the RFC. This is already implemented when you buy the router. Okay. Now all the MRIB entries will have expiry timer, as I told. So periodically join need to be sent to maintain the RP tree. Okay. And suppose if it is a dense mode, you have to periodically send leave message, otherwise you will start getting the feed actually. And if G is supposed to be there in source specific multicast, then node can create a source specific tree also. You start sending a join request for SG towards the next hop towards the source, which can be different than the next hop towards RP actually. So that also can be done. And whenever a packet is received from for SG thing from the source, and there is a star G subscriber are also there, and you are also a star G subscriber, you will also send it to your star G parent as well as to all star G children and all SG children. Okay. So this will typically the way the both trees, the transmission actually will be merged. So packet can come on SG and can go to star G. Okay. Whenever it comes on star G, it can go to SG also. If somebody is only SG subscribed, not star G, so packet when it's coming from source S, then only it will be transferred to that guy, not other packets. Okay. So as I told earlier, IPv4 multicast support is not mandatory. It's generally given as a premium service nowadays. IPv6 is a mandatory. But this will not work unless I create overlaid multicast tree, and there I use all these principles of creation of dynamically the tree and managing it, routing table kind of stuff. Okay, but we can do it other way around also. The way we do it is a different thing, but both are implementable and both have their own pros and cons. So the other alternative is now overlaid multicast using application layer. This is also called overlaid multicast, or you all sometimes call it application layer multicast. So in this case, node S, the source S is giving it to node A. Node A is the guy who is consuming this media feed. So B, it also gives it to B, so B will consume it. Then it forward to C, and these are the users who are getting it, using it, and forwarding it to other users. So they are all clients of at the user machines, and this is what we call overlaid multicasting. Routers are not involved. As far as the IP network is concerned, each S to A is a point-to-point link. A to B is a point-to-point link. So it can go over TCP, it can go over UDP, it can go over HTTP tunneling. Both are all are fine. Okay. Now, how this essentially can be, this is different, can be implemented. So one way is doing centralized indexing. So there is a server, so where all the list of media stream forwarders can be maintained. Okay. And that could be one way, or you create a mesh, you only know the unstructured network, and you just send a probe towards sources, but you have to then maintain routing tables also, which of course can be done. And you send a packet to A for joining in, and then the MRIB databases are created and you start getting the feed. But that may not be the efficient tree, because the way you are routing, the other intermediate router may not be interested in forwarding, because he is not consuming that feed. So we probably create an overlay tree separately, not over the mesh which is generated. Okay. So normally all the guys who are part of the tree should be using the feed. They should not simply be forwarded, because that will be overkill. So that's the reason we do it this way. So a new node comes in, he will fetch the list from the forwarders, list of forwarders from the server. Server will send this A, B, C, D, E, F list back to the new node. So it will test the communication to each one of these. So which one is going to be having better timing or something, to just pick up that. We'll make a request. So in this case, it's connecting to F, and the feed will start coming back to F. So F dot attached. So every node will keep on attaching to this tree one after another, ultimately forming a distribution tree. So now the question is, if there are a very large number of nodes joining a stream in a very short time. So typically when you are actually going to have a, say, a football match kind of thing, and you are doing a overlaid multicast based stream, but there is only one server which is having index. So every new node who joins within a very short span of time, large number of them will overwhelm the server, trying to find out who are the potential forwarders. And as the forwarders, say one guy can probably give it to only 4 or 5 guys. So the new guys have to register. So new guys who are getting the feed, they have to register themselves actually. And the old guys have to be removed from the database. So it's going to be a problem. So can there be a better way? So one of the better ways, if server fails, the system fails. That's one problem issue. Server getting overwhelmed whenever with a short span, large number of people will come. We call it a kind of a storm, or is a flash crowd. That's a term which is used technically. Flash is a flash mob kind of thing. It's a flash crowd handling problem actually. So one thing which we can do, certainly flash crowd may not be able to solve the problem with this, but we can actually innovate on this and figure out a solution. So first thing is indexing can be distributed. So we create a DST network of all the nodes the way we have done earlier. Key is being now going to be your stream ID. You find out the hash of this. The node closest to this hash ID as per the distance metric used will be the root node, and that should maintain this stream ID and value of all the endpoint addresses from where the feed can be received. This list will keep on getting updated as more nodes will start getting the feed. They will publish themselves. The guy who is already giving to the sufficient number of outgoing nodes, he will remove himself. Okay, or he will not update himself, so his entry will get expired. So these are timer based entries. So if you want to retain your entries as a forwarder, you have to keep on refreshing the timer. Okay, either you republish it or refresh your timer to the root node, either way. Okay, so this is what I am telling, that a node will, the moment you have sufficient children, you will simply remove yourself from DST. So kind of create a balanced tree, and everybody starts getting the audio, video, or media feed and play it back. Now, one of the problem is what happens if the bandwidth reduces in one of the links. So S is giving to A, but A to B, the link is now congested because passing through some internet where the congestion has happened. How to take care of that? Okay. So the only solution which you have, you can't do much for the congestion, either increase the capacity or reduce the requirement. So if you find a congested link, you transmit less. So in TCP, what happens? The transmit window is adjusted. Okay. So least of the transmit window and receive window, what is going to be used? The alternative solution which can be used for multicast scenarios is that you transmit in multiple layers, not in one. Okay. Each stream will have stream ID plus layer ID. This is a separate layer. So depending on which layer you want to receive, you join that particular group. Okay. The forwarder list will remain the same, but whatever you want, you will do it. If the other guy, even if you want to join more layers, other guy does not have it, you will only get a smaller feed. Okay, but you will be able to join the session. So the group essentially address technically, the way it is done, multicast is identified by this pair, stream ID plus layer ID. And forwarding layer will not maintain only the stream ID and the children, it will maintain a stream ID, layer ID and children. So if the layer ID, for different stream ID, layer ID pairs, there will be different list of children. So some children will get all the layers, some children will get only the base layer, some children will get few of the layers, and they will get a different quality of the stream at their end. This is the way probably the congestion control can be managed. In fact, it's done this way only. So this is also done in Jitsi. So if you are transmitting video, bandwidth become poor for somebody, it will simply curb on the video transmission. Okay, that's the reason why sometimes you are presenting your screen, it will not be visible to the other end. In fact, if my bandwidth goes down, my recording will get jeopardized in that case, because my audio feed, which is this application share, will not be going. But the way I have done is I have actually reduced this size. It's only 1/3 size of my screen, and I'm sharing only the application. So my area which is being encoded and transmitted is much smaller than the whole screen. So I have reduced my video bandwidth for screen, for the application sharing, or for the screen sharing, to much less, by not sharing the whole screen but sharing only part of it. Okay. And because it's almost static, so the resolution becomes better and better, so you can enlarge and then see it on your side. So the way it will be done is, if you are not getting your packets at the expected instance, you simply drop the least important layer. So everything will be coming in layers. So you can see there's a increasing priority. Message signaling is highest, then messaging, SMS or chat, then audio, L plus R, left plus right. So I am talking about a stereophonic system. Then video base layer, so you will get a very small video, or maybe it's going to be patchy because the frame rate is being reduced or size is reduced, both ways. And the higher layer is additional information. When you combine with L0, your size will increase and maybe your frame rate will increase. So this video can be multiple layers. So more the layers you get, the better the quality and resolution of the video you will get. And L minus R audio to even further improve the audio quality. Okay, so you can get a stereophonic thing. And typically the lowest video size, lowest layer, smallest video size, or the smallest frame rate. Add a layer, improve the quality. That's the way it actually goes. So for best quality, should receive all the layers. A very simple example I have given, that there is a video, every fifth column and fifth row is a base layer. So if you are only getting base layer, you can make a very small video by making an approximation, and then that's a video available to you, a small size. Maybe a next layer will be 3, 8, 13. So 3 plus 5, 8 plus 5, 13, the intermediate thing. When you fuse these two layers, you get a better quality of video, slightly higher size. So that's the way actually it can be done. MPI actually does it. Now there was another problem which happened is when I create overlaid multicasting. So typically, whenever user wants to join, he will go to, it will put the media ID and into the DST. It will get the forwarder list. It will then make the measurement and attach to some of them. But the problem here is I am receiving the video and then transferring to next 4 guys. If I am nasty enough, I can pick that video out and I can inject something else inside it as a video packet. The other guys will not be getting the actual feed. Now this is what we call malified node, and it is attacking the system. Injection of incorrect media packet. How to sort out this particular issue? This question was raised. This was a very valid question actually during our group discussions for the project. So one of the ways is that source will digitally sign each packet. So if the receiver tempers it or injects something, he cannot sign it. So the receiver will not play it back. So, but at least he can stop it. He can create a bottleneck by not sending the packets, and half of the some media can be blocked for some people. So one of the ways to actually handle it is that create multi-tree. So every node is going to get the feed from more than one paths, and these paths have to be node and link disjoint. Only source should be common and the destination should be common. So this actually can be created. Okay. So this is done through a algorithm. So I will talk about that algorithm, I think, in the next interaction. So there will be issues. So my request is, because I have done it, I might have made a mistake. Evaluate this thing, find out if there are problems in this. Okay, find out there are questions which are not being answered. If you can figure out, if you have questions that how this probably can be further improved, and if you have an idea, please do share. So
excuse me.
with that, I think I will close the, I will end my presentation. So I was able to only prepare this much.
Hello.
And now let's move to the interaction. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Haan, Jitesh.
Sir, I just want to add on one thing.
Your volume is less. Can you increase your volume?
Am I audible?
Yeah,
Am
now
I
it is
audible?
please.
Sir,
I can hear you.
only one thing I needed to add on. When you are in the 5th or 6th slide, when you are going, you are telling it is totally based on UDP. I just, it came to my mind. Sir, all the signaling part, wherever the signaling part will be involved, that need to be TCP. Rest, the media which is flowing has to be with the UDP. Probably it has to be combination of the both. Like in case if we lose, if in case we lose any part in the signaling in the process, then we will be losing the whole stream. How like I'll just give you an example of a video game, sir. Now if let's say a player is killing an opponent, and if it is a UDP packet, it has chances of getting lost. Well, theoretically it might or might not. How so? The signaling part which is there has to be TCP, which has more effect. Like you said, ki in a VoIP, if certain packets are missed, still we can make out the stuff. So the stream has to be in UDP, and the signaling part which will be evolved has to be with TCP. That is what is my thought process. More than making it fully.
I agree with it. That's a very, very valid point. Signaling has to be resilient. So even if you are only using UDP, then you have to create the same window flow control mechanisms. Okay, and retransmission mechanisms have to be implemented at the signaling layer itself to maintain the reliability. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Of course.
If it is UDP, then a NAC protocol for UDP will have to be created so that even if UDP has not reached, then again it has to be transmitted. But then in the real life signaling, that might not happen. So that is why I was thinking ki, whenever this protocol is thought about, the TCP part should be ingrained for only signaling. Yes, it might become slow, but then it will assure that has reached, that packet has reached, that thing will be there. And rest media can always flow in UDP. So these two combination.
Agreed.
That's all.
Agreed.
That's all.
But there is only one exception if you are behind a NAT which only allows UDP transport from inside to outside. Okay. So in that case, there is no other way except to build up your own what we call retransmission and flow control mechanisms on top of UDP. So even in fact, TCP is also only at the framing layer. At TCP layer only you introduce reliability, but actually IP packets are like datagram; they can be lost, and there are no retransmission in IP layer. So that retransmissions, everything is being created at the TCP layer, transport layer itself. So on top of UDP, you also can create your own similar resilience layer. This will typically be useful if you are behind a NAT and you are doing UDP hole punching kind of thing. Okay, through instance server you are communicating, because TCP connections may not be allowed at that point of time. But in real life application, now you are right, we should evaluate that what kind of connectivities are available to which particular node. If TCP is available, we should actually use TCP for signaling. UDP is available, UDP should be preferably used for all media transport, real-time media transport. If UDP is not available, TCP is available, you have to do with media transport, but then you have to now do the matching of the speed. Sometimes a packet is lost, you are doing retransmission. That time, then when you are sending now payload, so at the application layer itself, you will start now reducing your transmission rate so that you match with the speed and you compensate for that extra retransmission timeout which has happened.
Exactly.
So those are the additional things which mechanisms which have to be built in the system.
Sir, that's all.
But it was a good point actually, and so it was good for you clarified. Any other point? So thank you everybody for joining in, and maybe again I will prepare more slides, and once they are ready again I will announce for the session, and again I will record it and put it on YouTube as well as on Telegram channel for everybody. So see you in the next interaction. Thank you very much for joining in.
Good afternoon, sir.